Hi everyone, my name is Seetal Patel and I'm a consulting engineer with Palo Alto Networks. In this session, I'll be doing a review of the book Mastering Palo Alto Networks, the second edition by Tom Piens, who also goes by the pseudonym Reaper. Before we get started with the review itself, I wanted to take a few seconds to talk to you about the author himself. So Tom is somewhat of a legendary figure within the Palo Alto Networks circle. He was previously a tech engineer with Palo Alto Networks. In fact, he was the first tech support engineer for the EMEA region for Palo Alto Networks. I can only say that in terms of the fountain of knowledge, the background, the experience he has, there's no one else better qualified to write a book of this nature. Let's start by talking about who the book will be applicable for, the target audience. In my opinion, it can be applicable to novices and equally to the experts. So someone who's actually new to Palo Alto Networks technologies and is looking to get started would actually benefit from this book equally as someone who has considerable amount of experience, much like myself, because it can be a valuable reference to kind of look at specific use cases, specific solutions, and so on. For people who actually want to kind of also go through the Palo Alto Networks certification, this book will also be a handy reference because it does actually give you some tips along the way to say, these are the core topics you need to be focusing on in preparation for those exams. I just want to be clear that this is not the only way of actually you kind of preparing for the exam. I would highly encourage, in addition to reading the book, going through the book, also kind of set up a home lab to kind of, bring those hands-on skills, because that's certainly going to be crucial when you actually go and sit your exams for the Palo Alto Networks streams, right? So coming back to actually the book itself, in terms of layout, I think the layout is actually very logical in the way the flow goes through from core concepts into each of the domain areas that Palo Alto Networks has been famous for. So it's layer 7 security, user-based security, all the way through to advanced threat prevention and so on. So it does actually have a kind of a logical flow as to where you need to start your cybersecurity journey, I would say, right from a customer standpoint. And then ultimately it does then drill into each of those domain areas, giving you, I would say, enough confidence, enough guidance to then go and design and deploy and eventually kind of maintain those Palo Alto Networks systems. If I was to kind of pick a few examples, right, which I found of personal interest, and I'm not saying that that's the only interesting aspects. Certainly the whole book from my perspective has been enjoyable, but I personally come from a cybersecurity identity background. So for me, topics such as user-based security, application-based security are kind of key, and I quite enjoy those topics as well. So if I was to kind of talk about those two specific areas, I would say to understand what security benefits you're going to gain from actually creating context-based policies around users. You need to also understand, what are the challenges of actually deploying user context policies in the first place. So Tom does a kind of fantastic job, right, to say these are the kind of the challenges, and this is how you go about, leveraging the Palo Alto Networks technology, the platform itself, to kind of create user-based policies, and giving you concrete examples to say, the Palo Alto Networks infrastructure can integrate with XYZ vendors, XYZ technologies, and these are the kind of the policy constructs you need to go through. These are the steps you need to go through. The same would be true for any other configuration aspects. And again, just to be clear, I'm not just talking about application or user context. You could be applying security profiles, right? So that's equally kind of covered in depth. Global Protect, which is a remote access solution from a Palo Alto Networks perspective, again, has the same theme to how Tom has actually, penned his kind of chapters. So overall, I would say, from a benefits perspective, you'd have the theory covered for sure, but also then you would actually go into a detailed kind of configuration kind of chapters as well, and then eventually there's a big section dedicated to troubleshooting. And again, for me, that's actually highly beneficial because quite often with Palo Alto Networks, because the coverage domains are so vast, you can actually get drowned in the amount of data that you have for troubleshooting, right? But Tom, again, in my opinion, has done a fantastic job actually breaking down what essentially is a large domain area of troubleshooting into digestible chunks. So what's my conclusion? Right, I would say in summary, this book absolutely highly recommended from our perspective for all the reasons which I've actually went through. Again, using myself as an example, having been a consultant for Palo Alto Networks for a number of years, even I actually find this of value on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not just saying because I'm here to upsell the book or anything, but that's genuinely the truth from our perspective, right? So I would say overall, going back to my earlier point, if you are someone who's new to Palo Alto Networks, you will definitely benefit from the book. And if you're someone who's on the other end of the spectrum, who's actually, a veteran of Palo Alto Networks, so to speak, right, you will also find this book of value because for the exactly the reasons I mentioned earlier on, right? So you can pretty much go into the topics that you're interested for point in time, have a quick recap, perhaps re-jog your brain cells, I would say, right? And then kind of re-familiarize with yourselves with those technology areas. So overall, I would say fantastic job to Tom, aka the Reaper, right? And highly recommended the book. So for me, thumbs up.